At last, we've completed all 18 items in our asset list. Check it out. This is quite a large update, so I've split it into 4 parts: the background props, weapons, character models, and next steps. I decided beforehand that I wouldn't record any of the modeling process because I'm just too green. It'd be too time consuming to edit it down to the relevant parts, especially considering that I'd be switching back and forth between tutorials and Blender. That said, I will try to give a brief recap of the process. And I do want to acknowledge the many online resources I made use of, which will be linked in the description. Apologies if I butcher the channel names during the video. For the background props, I actually wasn't too particular about following references. The bush is more or less just a rock. Following a tutorial from Saga-esque, I started with a sphere, squashed and stretched it, and used proportional editing to pull some vertices outward before using the decimate modifier to reduce the poly count. Zesper also included a method to model the leaves, but I skipped that for now. For the trees, I used the skin modifier, following a tutorial from Joel Nantel. With this, we can plot out a shape using vertices, then use said modifier to add geometry around them. Quite nice for branching objects. Then, the leaves are simply modified icospheres floating on the tips of the branches. I do wonder if it matters that the meshes overlap. Will the lighting or rendering system treat this area as a single surface? Can there potentially be artifacts at the intersections? For the cliff, I had previously mentioned that I hoped the game engine terrain tools might be able to cover it, and as luck would have it, the landscaping tools in Unreal do seem to allow you to raise an area. So I'll just go with that instead of modeling a new structure. You may have noticed that I grayed out the cactus in the intro. That's because I decided I simply wouldn't make one. I don't have to copy the original scene object for object, yeah? It's not relevant to the actual gameplay either. For the character weapons, I box modeled each one using their icons as references. But since the fork doesn't have one, I just pulled a random image off of Google. Other channels can explain what box modeling is better than I can, but in short, it's using a basic shape, say a cube, and transforming it into something else. The basic operations are moving, called grabbing in Blender, rotating, and scaling, which are done on the vertices, edges, or faces of our shape. And we can also add geometry via extrusion, loop cuts, or insets. I actually took 3 passes on the green onion, the first of which was my very first attempt at Blender, months ago. I was so frustrated I gave up. I originally thought a green onion would make for a simple starting point, but I couldn't figure out how to split the green part nicely. I realized I need practice with even simpler things, such as a rock, to get used to the basics. My third pass looks more like the icon, but I think I like the colors on pass 2 more. If I redo this again, I could potentially use the skin modifier, as its shape is akin to a branch with a single split. I likely also want to redo the spork as it's not as round as I would like. I imagine I can improve on the topology, especially in the dish area. In comparison, the fork was much easier. Since there's no rounded areas to fit the shape to, I was able to get away with less geometry. For each of the 5 characters, I first made a 2D turnaround. I really only needed a front and side profile, but I wanted to get a sense of their look in 3D. Before trying this, I had never appreciated guidelines so much. It sounds obvious, but they really are incredibly helpful in getting the body parts to line up between angles. While I seemingly had little issue creating the enemy profile views, I had some trouble getting the green onion rat to look right from the front. I wonder if that's because it's already drawn at an angle, yet the eyes and nose are seemingly shifted towards the viewer instead of to the side. Maybe it doesn't match up with the front view, because this is already a stylized perspective. Also, for a while now, I've thought that this green onion rat doesn't really look like a rat. It kind of feels more like a mustelid, like a ferret or a weasel. Perhaps because the ears are too small, and its torso is comparatively longer. I'm not sure I'll do anything with this realization, but if any animal lovers happen to be watching, it'd be cool to hear about a more fitting animal, if there are any. Anyways, I digress. I used another trick to save time. I only drew 3 frames from scratch: a left, and front view. Front right and right are simply mirrored versions of front left and left, and the back view is the front view with the features redone and feet flipped around. Likewise, back right is a modified front left, and back left a modified front right. I was actually quite pleased with the results. Prior to trying this, I struggled with redrawing my characters in different angles, and while they still don't totally match, it felt like an acceptable approximation. Most of these turntables are still quite choppy though, so as always, there's room for improvement. It honestly made me think I might enjoy making a 2D game or animation. If I ever have any good ideas in the future, perhaps I'll try one. For the character models, I used the front and side views from the turnarounds for reference, and tried my best to box model a low poly equivalent. Shout out to Grant Abbott for having lots of helpful resources on modeling, which will certainly explain things better than I can. Then, following a tutorial from Jamie Dunbar, I did a quick texture paint using the Smart UV Project option and Blender's built-in texture painting brush. On finishing these first passes, I couldn't help but think, even though I still have a long way to go, I feel like the finish line is finally in sight. And also, what a humbling experience. I genuinely wish I'd started practicing Blender sooner. These blocky models simply do not live up to their 2D versions for me. I tried, but at the end of the day, I'm still just too inexperienced. I mentioned the helpfulness of guidelines, but I didn't utilize them well enough because some parts of the references don't actually line up between views. In retrospect, that was probably implied by the choppiness I was seeing in their 2D turntables. I also very quickly regretted giving every single character a tail. I have a feeling the topology around them might be problematic, and in some cases, like the spork rat, it feels like there might be too much geometry in certain parts of the mesh, but I'm not quite sure how I'd go about fixing that without restarting. I know I said I wanted to be less negative in a previous video, but for some reason, this time feels a bit different. Don't get me wrong, I'm really happy that I was able to complete these models, unrefined as they are. I think I'm just finally acknowledging the limitations of my current ability. Initially, I was hoping I could simply reuse the models in future prototypes, but for the sake of finishing this project on time, I'll leave any future passes for them. This regret, this burning desire to improve, perhaps is akin to losing a match in a sport you really enjoy. I believe that I'll keep getting better. I must. So, I actually realized back with the item button that I might have done this project backwards. You see, I've created all of my art assets first and plan to plug them into the game later. But usually, people start with blocking, with cubes or so-called programmer art, and get the gameplay mechanics down first in order to check that their idea is actually fun to play. In my case, I was thinking that, since I'm just copying an existing game, I shouldn't need to test out mechanics, so it'd be nice to get some art assets done, as that would visually appeal to me far more than a bunch of gray cubes. But at some point I started thinking that I don't really want to make items, but I've already made this button, so if I don't use it, that's wasted work. If I had started with gameplay first, perhaps I would have realized this sooner. So for this reason, before I start on animations, I'll try to throw together a playable demo with the assets I have now. I'm really hoping I can complete this in the next 2 weeks or so. With that, thanks for watching. See you then.